Another day in Galveston, vibrant modern city, international port, and tourist destination to visitors from around the world. A place where history comes to life at every corner. And although it's hard to imagine, this thriving city almost ceased to exist. With little warning, a powerful force came from the sky and sea that would forever change the course of history. Despite warnings from local officials that a severe tropical disturbance was in the making, most Galvestonians and even tourists refused to leave the island. It was a fatal decision that would cost thousands their lives. King Vidor, legendary early filmmaker who grew up in Galveston and was 5 years old at the time of the storm, recalled the experience.
I could see the waves crash against the streetcar trestle and then shoot into the air as high as the telephone poles.
Isaac Klein, an official with the National Weather Bureau at the time, reported 100-mile-an-hour winds, turning wreckage into lethal weapons.
Hurricane winds were driving timbers and slates through the air everywhere, splitting the paling and weatherboarding of houses into splinters.
The storm surge, which reached up to 15 feet above sea level, slung ships about in the harbor, smashing them through bridges and running them aground. Many were hurled out by the gale force winds or dragged beneath the waves as their shelter collapsed around them. Isaac Klein, who lost his wife in that horrifying deluge, described the frightful ordeal.
We could hear houses crashing under the impact of the wreckage, hurled forward by the wind and storm tide. But this did not blot out the screams of the injured and dying.
Galvestonians pulled together the best they were able that fateful night. Homes and businesses that managed to withstand the brutal winds and water became places of refuge for those whose homes were destroyed. A young woman whose family home fared better than others described taking in those less fortunate.
The wind was fearful and nearly blew off the roof of our house. The uproar in those upstairs rooms was something terrific.
While some survivors made their way to private homes that had withstood the storm, most sought sanctuary in larger and more substantial commercial facilities such as the Tremont Hotel. It is estimated that over 1,000 people became unexpected guests there during the gale. The Gulf's waters made it into the lobby and sent many people scrambling up to the mezzanine. The Union Passenger Station also served as safe harbor for commuters trapped on the island and for locals whose homes were washed away. Another venue that provided sanctuary to over 1,000 citizens was the Ursuline Convent, an architectural masterpiece that was the first school in the city of Galveston, as well as the first school for girls in the state of Texas. Lucy Dittman, a 15-year-old student at the convent, described the harrowing experience she shared with her fellow classmates and refugees.
We each thought the next minute would be our last. Windows were being smashed, doors blown open, the rooms and halls flooded. People were screaming for help.
Another structure that would survive the great storm is the one you stand in today. Before being transformed into a museum, it was the Galveston Orphans' Home. Its thick and sturdy walls held back the storm's fury and kept 29 orphans and 29 adults, including many neighborhood residents, safe from harm. The historic building suffered severe damage, but would later be fully repaired and reinforced. In fact, Samuel Clemens, better known as Mark Twain, led the entertainment at a gala held at the Waldorf Astoria in New York, where they raised over $50,000 to fund the renovations. History would record it as the worst natural disaster in the United States. Approximately 6,000 people died. and upwards of $30 million of property damage, over $6 billion today, had left a once vibrant and picturesque city in ruin. Teenager Lucy Dittman described the horrible aftermath.
Oh, what a sad Sabbath morning. Hundreds of people could be seen wandering about the streets with nothing left to them but what they had on.
Young Anna, whose family survived, recalled that same awful dawn.
But all of the destruction of properties and homes is as nothing to the loss of life. If the sea would only give us back our dead.
Over a century later, it's difficult to imagine the city of Galveston almost ceased to exist. And yet, it stands strong today. Massive engineering efforts were put in place to manage future ocean threats. A seawall 17 feet high and 3 miles long was constructed that would eventually be extended to a total of 10 miles. In addition to the seawall, they also took on the unbelievable task of raising the ground level of the entire city from 8.9 feet to 17 feet to meet up with the seawall. Consequently, every existing building and all infrastructure that had survived the storm, roads, trolley lines, gas, water, and sewer lines, had to either be moved or lifted up on stilts so that over 8 feet of silt could be brought in as fill across the city. It was a monumental effort, but Galveston prevailed and stands on that achievement today. A resilient and modern city that overcame great challenges, that honors the tragedy in its past and embraces the future with an undaunted spirit.